comes the tenant. Now an organization can have multiple tenants. Within a tenant, there can be multiple subscriptions. Like in my YLDF7 tenant, I am having multiple subscriptions. Within one subscription, there can be multiple resource groups associated with the same. Meaning, in my Visual Studio Enterprise subscription, I can have multiple resource groups. Now, I can have duplicate resource group names across different subscriptions. Meaning, resource group name uniqueness is bound at a subscription level, not globally. So I can create a same resource group called deleted, or best example is, let me filter this out. If you see, there are two resource groups with the name Data Sharks. One is in Visual Studio Professional, another is in Visual Studio Enterprise subscription. So resource group names can be duplicated across different subscriptions, but a same resource group name cannot exist in the same subscription. So resource group name is unique at a subscription level, whereas the Azure offerings that we create, those names must be unique globally. Now, one aspect that I wanted you all to discover yourself was the concept of resource provider. In the POC that we did, who all got the error of the resource provider while working on the case study or creating the storage account? No one, I guess. But as and when you create some advanced objects, correct? Meaning, let's say Azure OpenAI, Microsoft Synapse Workspace, etc. There are multiple Azure offerings, correct? So corresponding to those Azure offering, every Azure offering is like a resource, correct? So there are certain resource providers that are available that are like a REST API version or a services that needs to be enabled at a subscription level. What I mean by that? So under subscriptions, since you all would have only one subscription, click on that subscription. Now here, search for something called as resource provider. Can you see there's something called as resource providers? What does this mean? See, as an organization, I bought a subscription. Then I am creating resource groups within that subscription to grant access to individual developmental groups. I am the subscription admin or the subscription owner, and then I'm creating multiple resource groups within that, and I'm assigning each one resource group to each of the resources, individual resources. Correct? So now, imagine that I want to restrict the objects that are getting created in my subscription. Meaning, as an organization, I do not want anyone to leverage GitHub network or to create Microsoft add-ons, etc. Correct? Or I do not want anyone to create Microsoft storage. In that case, if the resource provider is not registered, then even though users would have owner access at the resource group level, if you all remember the hierarchy of access within the Azure, owner has the highest privileges. It has all the roles and permissions of all its child. After owner comes contributor, then reader. Now, though, remember, you can create custom roles that we had seen, correct? Wherein you can have precise permissions, correct? But owner, these are the common privileged roles, owner, contributor, and even if a user is a owner at a resource group level, In case if at a subscription level, the services are not registered, he or she won't be able to proceed with the creation of that. So only the subscription owner can do these registrations and not deregistration and registrations, and then the user would be able to go ahead with the creation of that. So some of you all had stated that you were not able to create the storage account because of a resource provider, because in that corresponding subscription, the Microsoft.storage was in not registered state. So in that case, what you need to do is click on the corresponding resource provider and click on register. What this would do is it would register that resource provider at the corresponding subscription level, post which you all would be able to create the respective resources within your resource groups.
Nandan, this has to be done with our main account, is it? Or that global admin account will also?
This has to be done via the account that has owner role at the subscription. Correct.
So that global administrator account will also be able to do.
No, you all are mixing two different aspects. Correct. Let me again clarify the roles and permission. It seems there is some confusion that most of you all are still getting confused with the two concepts. Correct. Okay. Remember the hierarchy. Tenant is one tenant. Within tenant, you have multiple subscriptions. Correct. So tenant has separate set of roles and subscription has separate set of roles. These are two different aspects. In sync with me up till now? Now within tenant, there are tenant level roles and permissions, roles and administrators. So now I am in the tenant. So within the tenant, I have roles and administrators. So the global administrator role is a tenant level role. If you all can read here, it can manage all aspects of Microsoft Entra ID and Microsoft services that uses Microsoft Entra ID. Is it anywhere stating that it has access on a subscription? No, correct, because these are Active Directory or tenant level roles. So global administrator, fabric administrator are organizational roles because a tenant is like an organization. Now a tenant can have multiple subscriptions. Now, in the subscription, until and unless now subscription has its own set of roles that we had seen, like owner, contributor, etc. Correct? Until and unless an account has been provided the access on the Azure subscription, even though I am a global administrator, even though I am a fabric administrator, as long as I do not have access on the subscription, I won't be able to see the subscription. So I'll discuss on the case study and its results now. In the case study, I had provided a scenario that first create a user that has global administrator role and a fabric administrator role. And post that, provide that corresponding user owner access at the subscription level. So in that case, now once you log in that case, once you log in into the Azure portal via the first account, you all would be able to go in the Active Directory, add users, add users and create applications because it's a global administrator role that you have provided. But if you go into the subscriptions, you would also be able to see the subscription because you had added the subscription ownership. This is the first case of the first user. Now, from the logging in via the first user, I told you all to create the second user. Because the first user, new user that you all had created had global administrator tenant privileges. Because of that, you all were able to go ahead in creation of a secondary account, a new account. In sync with me up till now? So the secondary account that I asked you all to create should not have any Active Directory role privilege, nor should not have any subscription role. And I told you all to log in via that secondary account. So once you log in via that secondary account, in Active Directory, you could not create any new users because the secondary account didn't have any global administrator privileges or Active Directory privileges other than read only. Whereas the secondary account could not even see the subscription. In sync with me up till now? Because we had not granted him subscription level access. After that, I had told you all to grant the secondary account the global administrator privilege and then again log into Azure portal. Even if the secondary account is now a global administrator, since the subscription level role was not provided, even though that is an Active Directory. Sorry, it's a global administrator, the subscription won't be visible. That was the secondary proof of concept. I hope now you are able to understand why I provided you this case study. Because Active Directory roles are different, subscription level roles are different. In case if a subscription has owner role, like the primary account and the first new account that you had created, any of those accounts can be used to register the resource provider. So, having ownership role on a subscription level is needed to make changes at a subscription level, like registering or unregistering the resource providers. It can be any account that has owner role. There can be a scenario wherein the secondary new account that I created, I do not give that secondary account global administrator role, but I can give him or her the owner role at this subscription level. So Active Directory roles are different and subscription level roles are different. Do not intertwine or mix those two. Both are two different aspects. Is this clear now? Or is there still any
Yes,
confusion?
Yeah, clear.
And then for the
Okay.
secondary user that we are going, because I have not created yet, for that which rules we were mentioned yesterday.
So for the secondary user, initially do not assign it any role across Active Directory or subscription and log in via that. You won't be able to see. You won't be able to see any subscription, nor you would be able to create any users in the Active Directory.
Correct.
Then grant that secondary user a global administrator role and log in again. You would be able to create new users or register applications, but you all won't be able to see the subscription again because subscription level access has not been provided to that secondary account. The third scenario that I provided was invite an external user, invite two external users, one with a type guest and one with a type member, because that aspect we would understand when we go across some of the advanced data security and governance features in Microsoft Fabric. So have those two users ready. Now, then we saw across resource groups. Resource group is like a logical container within a subscription. Resource group location is majorly to preserve the metadata of the resource group. Within the resource group, I can have multiple Azure offerings. They need not be in the same region, but it is preferable to have them in the same region for better performance and cost reduction aspect, because imagine that if my data integration tool is in South India, whereas my data is present in North Europe, every time when I hit that data system, I'll have to travel. So travel in whenever there is a cross-region travel, Microsoft charges ingress and egress, incoming, egress, outgoing charges. Along with that, since it has to travel that much distance, there is some latency involved that in turn impacts your performance. So ideally, it is recommended that all your objects, ideally it is recommended that all your offerings be in the same geo as the resource group. Then we discussed with respect to the concept of redundancy, the concept of locally, the zone redundancy, geo redundancy, locally redundant pair, etc. Then we created certain Azure components like storage account. In storage account, we created two types of storage account. One is an Azure Blob storage. Another is an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Whenever you enable the enable hierarchy namespace property, it creates a Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Whereas in case if you disable it, it creates a blob account. Then comes Azure Data Factory.
Can you repeat this again once, Nandan, what you said?
Okay. Whenever while creating the storage account, correct, you had an option of a property called enable hierarchical namespace. In case if you enable it, then it creates an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. If you do not enable it, it creates a storage account. We'll take a look of what is the difference between an Azure Blob Storage and storage account tomorrow. Correct?
Okay.
Then we created a key vault. Correct? Now today I'll explain you all how to leverage a key vault and what is the purpose of the key vault. Because I would ask you all to create a register an application, meaning create a service principal, client secret, and preserve that client secret in the key vault. That's the case study for today. Now we saw that. Now let's understand the hierarchy at a subscription level. I can have once a tenant can have multiple subscription. One subscription can host multiple resource groups. Correct? One resource group can host multiple Azure offerings. Now a user can have access at a subscription level. In case if a user has access at a subscription level, all the child items automatically get inherited. Meaning, if I'm owner at a subscription level, it means automatically I'll be owner at all the resource group level. It gets inherited. So the next aspect is, imagine that I am the subscription owner. I created two different resource groups, and in that two different resource groups, I am providing one resource access on one resource group to, let's say, user 1, and another access to another resource group to user 2. Correct? So in that case, I can even grant a user access at a resource group level. Meaning, in the resource group, under activity access control IAM, I can explicitly grant the same roles, owner, contributor, etc. at a resource group level. So in that case, the user would have access at a resource group level. So now, in yesterday's scenario, what I stated is, for the second user that we created, correct? You all added the global administrator permission. Then you refresh the page, you weren't able to see any subscription. Post that, the third scenario was via user 1 log into Azure portal. Then you all had created the resource group, correct, which contained the storage account. Under the resource group access control IAM, go and add the secondary user as the owner of this resource group, and then log in via the secondary account again. Then you would be just able to see the resource group. You won't be able to create new resource groups via the secondary account because it does not have the subscription level permission. It only has resource group level permission. Hence, the secondary account won't be able to create any new resource group, but would be able to create any objects within this resource group because you have provided it owner access within this resource group. So in case if you provide an owner access to a resource group, all the Azure offerings within that would inherit that ownership access. Then you can even grant access at an offering level. Meaning, I can grant a user specific access or a complete owner access at the object level. So in that case, there is some concept of reader, correct? So I'll tell you all, correct? This is some advanced aspect. In case if you all want to try, you can try or ignore, correct? The external user that you all had invited, correct? Try to grant that external user owner access on the storage account and test out whether when you log in via that external account to Azure portal, would you be able to see the storage account or not? This is some advanced aspect. This in case if you are interested to learn, you can try this out. So then this is the hierarchy, that is subscription, resource group and offerings. And the parent inherits the child inherits the permissions at the parent level. So in case if I'm owner at a subscription, I'm automatically owner in the child objects as well. So now let's go and take a look with respect to how to leverage an Azure Key Vault. So we all created an Azure Key Vault, correct? So now within the Azure Key Vault, there is an expand the object section. Here there is something called as keys, secrets and certificates. If you all remember in the Azure service, whenever we are creating an Azure service principal, there was an option to create certificate as well. So that certificate I can import or upload here as well. But for us, we would be majorly concerned with the secrets, correct? So under the secrets, so I hope you all remember how to create the app registrations. Under Active Directory, under app registrations, you register an application. Post that, you go and create a client secret and instantly copy the client secret, because once the page refreshes, the client secret cannot be recovered back. So in that scenario now, under secrets, in the Key Vault, click on generate a secret. So it's like I'm creating a secret. Since I am generating it, let's put a name, your app name and secret. Now, the value that you copied, the client secret value, you need to paste it here. So now let's say my secret value is 1234. Can you all see here? The secret value is encrypted as of now. It won't be visible. So you have to be very careful when you copy paste it, correct? That you do not add any space, etc. Now, I can set an expiration date at a secret level. Imagine I have manually created a password, not the app registration, but some other credential that I want to have a time duration for that. So here I can set an expiration date. But in case of app registration, since there is already an expiration date, I need not have this property anymore. And then I'll click on create. So now I am preserving the app registration secret in a secure location called Azure Key Vault. So now if you go and click here, this is the secret. There are different versions of the secret. What does this different version mean? Imagine that your client's secret got updated, correct, in the Active Directory. Then you can create a new version. So now imagine that my password has been, rather than 1234, 1234, 5678. So this is the latest version. So this states that the original value for this secret was this. Now this is the latest value. Now, in case if I have to check the latest value, I can click on that and show secret value. This is my secret value that you can leverage for your future use cases, future automation use cases that you take a look. So this is how you leverage an Azure Key Vault to preserve the credentials and other aspects for security purposes. Any queries up till now?
On the secret key, like how do you associate it with the account or with which you going to be using it, or is it like totally different?
I'll be showing it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
How, meaning your question is how can anyone access this key vault? Correct.
Yes, and say for instance, secret your key vault will have secret keys, right? So does it does it get associated with any resource group or any Azure
Understood.
offering? How does that happen? That is what my question was primarily.
Okay.
And then the question is how the other offerings will talk to the keyword.
Understood. Understood. There
Ah,
is no direct connectivity. You have to explicitly create the connectivity. Correct. So in
okay.
certain applications like Microsoft Fabric, Azure Data Factory, there is an option to integrate to the Azure Key Vault. But in certain offerings, there is no option. You have to write a code to integrate with the Key Vault. So in that code, you need to authenticate it to access the Key Vault, correct? And that integration can be via the account or a service principal.
Service principal. Okay. Got it.
Now, you all had logged in via user 1 and created the Azure Key Vault, correct? So now the original user via which you created user 1 is also owner at a subscription. What I say is in the case study, today's case study, create an app registration and that corresponding client secret as a secret within the Azure Key Vault via user 1, correct? And then log in via the original account into this Key Vault and try to go and access the secret, correct? Even though you are owner at a subscription level, meaning your owner at a resource group level, you won't be able to come and check the secret, correct? And I'll explain that tomorrow once you all do the case study, correct? So what is the solution? Why did even if I had the owner level, even if I had the owner level role at the resource group level, at the subscription level, still why am I not able to access the secret? Correct. So that you will try out and I'll explain it tomorrow. So any queries with respect to Key Vault? So tomorrow only I'll show how can you add other users or grant other users access to the Key Vault. So any queries on the concept of Azure Key Vault? I'll consider it as a no and proceed. Go
Hello,
ahead.
Nandan. Yeah. So, using this access control inside Key Vault, can we add the offerings to give access on the Key Vault?
That's what Pallavi I'll discuss tomorrow. Correct?
Okay.
Because there are two options. That's what I want to explain you all tomorrow. But before I explain that, you all try it out, you'll understand the failure. So once I explain it tomorrow, the concept would be much more clearer to you all.
Okay.
Clear?
Yeah.
Okay, let me take one step back since you asked, correct? As I said, by default, it gets inherited, correct? So even if I am an owner at the original account via all the owners at the subscription level would be owner at the Key Vault level. But even if the original account is the owner, he or she won't be able to access the secret. So even if now what other role would you add in the access control IAM? You cannot add, correct? Anything. Owner is the highest privilege. If I'm stating that even the highest privilege cannot have access in the key vault, that's how secure the key vault is. That's what I'll explain tomorrow. But so that it sticks in your all mind, you all go through it today, and tomorrow we'll understand the reasoning behind that. Any queries?
So, Nandan, on the use case, everything on the subscription side was clear, like admin and user and the role that needs to be granted at the subscription and at the tenant level. But at the offering level or at the resource group level, you said the user one will create one resource group, and then we will create two storage accounts with names, and then we will enable them with enable name hierarchy, enable and those named hierarchy.
So
Yeah,
basically, I told you all to create two storage accounts, correct?
yeah.
One storage account, do not enable that property.
Uh,
In another storage account, enable that property. In that way, there would be two different storage accounts. One with an Azure Blob Storage and another is, if you see, select
uh,
primary service, correct? Here it's
uh,
Azure Blob Storage or Data Lake Storage Gen 2. So one storage account would be creating Azure Blob Storage and another would be creating Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. How? By selecting this property. If you select this property, it creates an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, else it creates an Azure Blob Storage. So that was the first aspect. Then create an Azure Key Vault. Then create and register an application. Copy the client secret of this application and create a secret within this Key Vault and preserve that credential here. This is your case study.
create a key vault, and what was that last one?
So
Sorry,
within the
yeah.
Key Vault, create a secret. And in that secret, preserve the app registration ka client secret value here. You all registered an application or a service principal, correct? वो service principal का जो secret है, जो credential है हम लोग ने जो बनाया, add that as a value in the secret that you generate. So वहां से कॉपी करोगे आप लोग वो क्लाइंट सीक्रेट वैल्यू को और यहाँ कीवर्ड के सीक्रेट में प्रिजर्व करके रखोगे. This is your case study.
Okay.
So now
One second, one question is, can you go back to the keyboard? We discussed secrets. There is one more option of keys also, right?
keys, yes, the keys and the aspect of granting users access in the key vault I'll discuss tomorrow. Those are some of the more advanced aspects that you all won't understand unless you actually have a hands-on experience on the key vault. Clear? So now in the resource group, we created two storage accounts, one key vault. Eventually, we would be creating an Azure SQL database as well. But for now, we would proceed with the major aspect that I want to create, that I want you all to create as well. Because now going forward, the case studies would keep on increasing. The scope of case study is something called as a fabric capacity. So now today we would be deep diving into some of the fabric concepts as well. So in your resource group, create a component called fabric capacity. When you search for fabric capacity, you see something called as Microsoft Fabric. So under Microsoft Fabric, click on create. So basically Microsoft Fabric needs a dedicated engine for it to run. Correct? I'll explain these concepts in detail next week. But today, as a simple understanding, consider that Microsoft Fabric is an end-to-end data and analytics tool. So for me to execute all those jobs, I need an underlying core engine for it to run. That core engine is what one can consider as the fabric capacity. So You all need to create a fabric capacity, provide a capacity name, select a region in which you want to create it. Let the region be the same region as your tenant. Correct? And if you all remember how to check the tenant region, go to the tenant properties, there you would be able to see the tenant region. Correct? Then select the capacity size. Remember, fabric capacity is very costly. You all have only $200 credit, meaning around 16,000 rupees of credit.
In that case, we won't get, right?
Hold on, I'm coming to that. Correct? So, if you see, the F64 capacity contains 64 capacity units. I'll explain capacity units, everything, not today, but eventually. For today, just focus on understanding of creation of a fabric capacity. An F64 capacity charges 8,55,000 per month. Understand how costly the fabric capacity is. So small organizations, small projects won't benefit from having a fabric capacity because it's like you're paying 8 lakh per month for an F64. And why is F64 present here by default? Because some of the features and functionalities are not available for capacities beyond below F64. So F64 is the minimum capacity that contains all the features and functionalities that Microsoft releases. Certain features and functionalities are not available in capacities below F64. Hence, for organizations, it's recommended to have a minimum of F64 capacity. Another way for Microsoft to do their business. Correct? But since we are not concerned with that, we are a developmental environment, you all can proceed with an F2 capacity. But your credit is only 16,000 rupees. But F2 capacity is also asking you for 26,700 rupees. So would I be able to create that? The answer to that is yes. Now, why the answer is yes is, as I said, it is 26,722 rupees for the entire month that it is running. Running here is a critical terminology to use. Because now let's go ahead, I'll create it and I'll explain you all why you all would be able to create it. So remember team, please start with an F2 capacity. Do not proceed with an F64 capacity. It would choke up your entire credit in a span of some days. If you have some property enabled, I'll come to that. Since we are a developer, let it remain as F2 capacity only. Initially, eventually at one point of the time to test out certain features and functionalities, I can upscale this. Upscale this, not upscale, my fault. Correct? And then you have to select a capacity administrator, meaning who should be the admin of that fabric capacity. Correct? So here, try providing an external user who has been added as a member. Okay, I'll not come to that. Let's discuss that later. Correct? So let this property be as is. Now let me go and click on review and create. So now I'm creating a fabric capacity of F2. It would take some time. So by the time the fabric capacity is getting created, let's go across our agenda. This was our agenda, correct? So on the initial aspect, we understood the difference between different cloud service providers. We took a look with respect to the tenant, Azure Active Directory, user licensing groups, and app services. We took a look with respect to Azure portal, and we are now in part D, wherein we created a resource group, created Azure Blob Storage, a Fabric capacity is in progress. You can ignore the Azure SQL database part because that will be creating later. So today we will be focusing on Fabric capacity, Azure DevOps, and Fabric portal. And then in case if time permits, we'll focus on part E. That is creating a Fabric workspace and assigning Fabric capacity and Azure DevOps integration. That would be the scope for today, and Fabric admin portal. So in next 2 days, we would be covering the entire introductory part of this bootcamp. Now, if you all see, my Fabric capacity is now created. Now let me go to this capacity. Now in this Fabric capacity, can you see the option here to pause? As long as I pause the Fabric capacity, I won't be charged. So remember, even if you create an F2 capacity, the overall monthly cost of that F2 capacity is 26,000 rupees. But it is 26,000 per month, assuming that the capacity is on throughout the month. Else it is pay as you go aspect, meaning as long as this capacity is active, it would charge you for that many hours. So that's the monthly cost. There is an hourly cost. Hourly cost might be around $11 to $12 per hour. Hence, the moment the Fabric capacity is created, as long as this is in active state, it would charge. But the moment I pause it, and if it is in disabled state or in pause state for the entire month, I won't be charged even 1 rupees for that capacity because it is in pause state. I'm no longer using that capacity. Remember, even if the capacity is in resume state and you're not executing that jobs in the Microsoft Fabric ecosystem, still you would be charged because what Microsoft assumes is as long as it is in resume state, you have bought a dedicated space for you have bought a dedicated engine. If you have bought a dedicated engine, meaning you are bound to pay for that, whether you are making use of that engine or not. If you pause that engine, Microsoft removes that dedicated engine and provides it to someone else. So you are not charged for that in layman terminology. So even if you have $100 credit, you can still create an F2 capacity and use it very precisely. So remember team, in case if you all have created a Fabric capacity, pause it if you are not using it. If you keep it in resume state, in a span of 1 day, 4,000 rupees would be removed if you are using F64. So let me iterate again. Be very careful with respect to Microsoft Fabric capacity. For storage account Key Vault, the charges are very menial. It's hardly $10 throughout the month. Not $10, 10 rupees to 50 rupees throughout the month. It hardly charges anything. But if you keep the Fabric capacity in a resume state for even 1 day, it would reduce your overall capacity credits to even half, depending on what tier or what SKU you are using the Fabric capacity with. So now I have paused it. I can even upscale it, meaning I can change the size. Correct? I can make it from F2 to F64, F128, etc. Now, under settings, there is something called as capacity administrator. Now let me go and add some guest users as the capacity administrators. Can you see I can even add service principals as fabric, the fabric capacity administrator. So I have a service principal called app_Power BI. I can make it as a fabric administrator or a fabric capacity administrator. It got successfully added. Now, in case if I refresh the page, I'll be able to I should see that. But now under users, let me add a external user. Can you see Gmail account is my external user, correct? So let me try to add that account as a fabric capacity administrator. Can you see fail to save admins in the fabric capacity, delete capacity? This is my capacity name. It failed to save the admin, the external user. So the case study that I'll be providing you is create a fabric capacity of F2 SKU, then pause it immediately because we do not need it till next 2 to 3 days. So pause it immediately. Post that, under capacity administrator, if you all remember, I told you in yesterday's case study to invite 2 external users. One external user as type member and another external user of type guest. Try to add the 4 new users that you had created, correct? User 1, user 2, which were internal users that you explicitly created, and 2 external users that you invited. So overall 4 new users are present in this system today. Try to add all the 4 users as capacity administrators. And also the app that you registered, try to add it here and understand which all users and applications can be added as an administrator. Any queries? So ideally, you cannot add external users as capacity administrator. Microsoft does not provide that. Whereas you can add service principals. But the problem is, why isn't the enterprise application becoming visible here? I'll leave that to you all and we'll discuss it tomorrow. So team, any queries up till now on fabric capacity? Why you can purchase a capacity even if the overall cost is more than what your overall credits? Any queries? Before we move on to something called as Azure DevOps.
Yeah, Nandan. So I have some queries. So, like when to in real like practical scenarios. So how should we go with the capacity size? When to choose which capacity?
So today's session is not about understanding the fabric capacity, but to create a fabric capacity, to understand the Azure portal and different portals. Correct? So hold on to that question. Hold on to that question for today, and we'll discuss on the practical cases once we actually deep dive into Microsoft Fabric. As a developer aspect, start with the bare minimal, that is F2, to preserve your credits.
Yeah.
Clear?
Yeah. So any can you like also like what are the features we cannot use in lower than F64? Okay.
So
Capacity.
see, you do
So
not know
this
Microsoft Fabric, then how would you understand the features and functionalities? As I said, today's session is with respect to just Fabric capacity creation. As and when we deep dive into the Microsoft Fabric, at that time I'll cover the scenarios where all it's a limitation, etc. It's not a scope for today. That would confuse you all.
okay, got it. Yeah, thank you.
Today is just about understanding the
Clear.
different portals, how to create those capacities, how to grant access to those capacities and manage those capacities. Nothing other than that.
Okay.
Clear?
Yeah, clear.
And then all this we have to create under user one or that original account which we logged.
You can create it via any account that has owner access on the subscription. And it was, I guess, the original account or the user one. As long as any user has access on the owner access on the subscription, it's okay. But in the capacity administrator, try to add all the 5 users, 2 external, 2 new, and 1 the original, meaning all 5 users try to do that and try to add 1 application, the app that you registered. Then you will understand that external users cannot be added. I hope now you understand why there are why I told you all to understand external users as well. Because in most of the organizations, what happens is the organization hires some external consulting team to manage this. But in case if you invite their accounts as external users within our tenant, and if you try to create a Fabric capacity in that tenant, unfortunately, they cannot be added as capacity administrators because external accounts cannot be added as capacity administrators. So you have to explicitly create a new user within that tenant for those consulting team. So these are critical architectural and project level decision that one needs to do in such cross aspect. So this concept of external users, internal users becomes very important. Clear? Why now I hope you all are able to realize why I didn't start with Microsoft Fabric, but this original Active Directory level concepts, because those are interbound. So create a Fabric capacity with F2 capacity, F2 SKU, and try to add everything as capacity administrator. And then you will understand which all can be added, which all cannot be added. And make sure you pause it once you create it, else it would choke up your capacity, choke up your credits. And then you will have to use a new credit card, new email account, and a new mobile number. Clear? So we covered something called as the point D. Now, before we move into something called as Azure DevOps and Fabric Portal, do you all want to take a 5-minute break? Because Azure DevOps is a whole concept in itself and Fabric Portal. So now it's 11:01. Take a 5 minutes break. And those who have any queries, you all can discuss here itself with respect to whatever issues you all are having cross group, correct? Like the subscription creation, etc. So let's meet